This video is about a pretty interesting topic to me and to many parents. It's about talking to children, but it's not about talking really to your children, although it somewhat applies to that. This is more about talking to children that aren't your own. So they could be neighbors' kids, or they could be family members that you don't see that often, maybe nieces and nephews and things like that. How do we talk to those kids? So see if this scenario sounds mildly familiar. Tell me if you have seen this. Okay, let's say you're at it could be a family gathering, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, cousins, this sort of thing. You get together maybe 3 or 4 times a year, so you don't see each other a lot, but you do get together on a regular basis. And you have a family member comes in, a bunch of kids, fooling around the floor, 9 or 10 years old. You have a family member that comes in, takes off their coat, whatever, and they start to engage with some of their nephews and nieces that they haven't seen for a while. And you'll hear a question like this: Matthew, how do you like school this year? Am I right? How many times have you heard that question? And what's the response? One word. One word. You'll hear maybe good or fine. It's almost like the poison pill of adult-child conversation when you say that. It just never seems to work. As a matter of fact, in my entire life, and I've heard this question asked many, many times from adults to children, I don't believe I've ever heard a child respond in a really conversational or affirmative or positive way to that question. So that was has to be off the page. That's an instruction, an insight into what not to do. But at the same party, right, or same gathering, you will frequently see that there are 1 or 2 parents that are somehow or another achieving a connection with children who are not their own. They're having a conversation. There's an aunt who's sitting on a sofa, and there's a 7-year-old next to her, maybe a niece, and they're talking about a book that the niece has, and they're turning pages and stuff. Or you have an uncle that's on the floor, and he's playing with plastic things with a niece or a cousin or something like that. So you do see this. So we see these parents, these adults, and somehow or another they have it figured out. They can achieve a connection with kids. They're good at kids. They're good at talking to kids. That's what this video is about. And here's the thing. If we can do that as parents, it is really sort of a magical thing. It's like a little bit of a power, and it actually can make you be a little bit of the cool parent, become a cool parent, if you can talk to friends of your son or daughter, for example. So it's something that was talked about quite a bit in our household when my kids were growing up. So how do we achieve this? So it's not that hard. It takes a little practice, a little effort, but it's really almost like if you know the tricks, you can get it. So I'm going to give you the tricks. It comes down to something very simple. 4 words. 4 words. Get into their world. Get into their world. That is the trick to talking to children and even teenagers. Get into their world. Relate to them. So what does that mean practically? Well, with young kids, grade school age, that sort of thing, many times when you see them like at a family gathering, they might have brought a few toys with them. They might have a book, they might have something to play with, video game, whatever. Because they know there's going to be a lot of parents there, so they kind of bring the stuff they like to play with in case it's boring. That would give you a clue. That'll give you a valuable clue. So maybe you have a child that you haven't seen for a while. They know who you are. You know who they are. Uncle, nephew, uncle, niece, something like that. They're playing on the floor with these red plastic things that are connecting in different ways. Or they're making something. Kids play on the floor a lot of times. Get down on the floor and start relating to them. And it's easy to break the ice with a question such as this. What are you building? Can you show me how this works? Stuff like that. Pretty basic. What we're doing is basically just getting into their world, aren't we? We're relating to them with something that they were excited about. And the fascinating thing is, if you do this a couple times, you'll realize it's almost like magic. It unlocks this door, and all of a sudden you've got this child engaging with you and talking to you, and you're learning all about these red little things that go together, and you're also learning about other things. You're getting a connection, and it's just kind of wonderful. Now, sometimes you don't have a clue like that. There aren't little red connecting things that are going together. There's not a child that has a book they're reading or something like that. So you have to do maybe a little bit more work. You find a parent of one of these children, and you say, what is Andrew interested in? What is Rachel interested in? What are they doing, etc. Let's kind of apply this to a little bit more challenging area, which is when we're dealing with a teenager, okay? So here's the scenario on that. Again, some kind of gathering, and Rachel, teenager, on the sofa. When kids get to be teenagers, they kind of move from the floor to the sofa. You ever notice that? So she's on the sofa, and she's got her mobile device or iPhone or whatever it is, and she's very focused on that. You can tell she's just kind of walling off the world. It's like, I don't want to be here. I'm interested in whatever I'm doing here, which could be anything from texting people to watching videos or Instagram, whatever. Anyway, she's in her world. She's in her world. It's the small device world. So how do you break through on something like that? Well, if you've done just a little bit of groundwork, maybe you find out from her parent that she likes to sing. Maybe you find out from her mother that she has real passion about singing. And you've known this for a while, but recently she just got into an a cappella singing group at her high school. And the group name is the Not So Sharps. The Not So Sharps. Actually, that's a real a cappella group name. A cappella groups, as you may know. Not that I'm into a cappella, but anyway, I did a little research on this. A cappella groups tend to have really creative names, the Not So Sharps. Anyway, going back to this scenario here this imaginary scenario. So you talk to the mom, says she just got into this a cappella group at high school. It's hard to get into. She loves it. It's called the Not Too Sharps. So, you approach Rachel carefully, kind of sit in that area on the couch. She's kind of zoned into the small device of some sort. And you just kind of slip and say, hey, Rachel, I heard you got into the Not Too Sharps. Just throw that out there. Rachel looks over like, whoa, he knows something about my life. What is this? How does he know that? That's a great icebreaker. Knowing something that they're really interested in and just throwing a little bit of sort of innocent, innocuous, non-threatening question that lets them know. Basically, you're letting your niece, in this case, we'll say, you're letting your niece know, I know something about your life. I care about you. Got to be careful about doing this with teenagers sometimes. But if you do it in this sort of way, kind of find something they're interested in and that they can talk about a little bit, it can really unlock some doors. I'll tell you a true story, just a true family story. My son was a pretty hardcore punk rocker when he was in high school. All of his friends were as well. And he wanted to have a thing called a house party. He wanted to have a band come over. They would have part of the house. They would, play music. It'd be a party. And okay, so that's cool. We put together some rules to govern the event so the house wasn't destroyed. But one of the kids that came over was the lead singer. From my viewpoint as a parent, pretty rough exterior, top to bottom. Gruff, not very accessible, all sorts of piercings and stuff. It's a little off-putting, frankly. But anyway, he went down, did his thing, and he was singing and that sort of thing. But at one point in the night, I'm in the kitchen, and he had to come through the kitchen to go to his car, okay? And I knew just a little bit about him, something about the band that he was in or whatever, or some music that he liked. And as he's coming back in, I knew his name, and I said, hey, whatever his name was, can't remember. I heard that you like this band, Bad Brains, or something. And he stopped, like, what? An adult's talking to me about punk rock. What could this phenomenon be? And he kind of sidled over, and he was a little cautious at first, but I tell you, within like 90 seconds, we were just like off to the races. We were just having this most incredible conversation. He was so accessible, his entire demeanor changed. Like I somehow put this magic key and unlocked this different persona. True, I mean, that's what happened. I put this magic key in, and I unlocked a different persona. Anyway, it was a great conversation for me and for him. I think he could tell, wow, here's an adult that's actually validating the fact that I like a certain kind of music that maybe this adult doesn't even know about or wouldn't like at all. Funny story. He goes downstairs. He tells my son later on. He says, "Hey, your dad's pretty cool." So like I said before, if you can connect with kids, if you can talk to them, you kind of become the cool parent. So that's the whole thing. 10 minutes. Get into their world. And one other thing I would just throw out, I've seen this happen many times. Get into the world, stay in the world. Don't just ask a few questions and then bring it back to yourself and say, what kind of music I like to listen to a century ago or whatever it was, or when I was young. Get into the world. If they invite you to talk about yourself, cool, absolutely great. But kids like to talk about themselves. Teenagers like to talk about themselves. And that's what we did when we were kids, when we were teenagers. That time is kind of over for us. It's their time. So validate them with the toys they're interested in, what they read, what they do, what they're passionate about. And you really will, I think, unlock some magic. And it just feels great when it happens. I hope you found this video useful. If you like it, feel free. Hit the subscribe button. I usually do a video about once a week. Go up to the channel and you can see other videos that are up there. And I hope it was useful in raising your great kids.